All
Good
right.
morning, Nate.
Thank you, Nate. Okay, so Nate provided us an overview of the staff data that are expected, or at least all of the file types that are expected to be submitted for Fall 2. So we will be discussing the first two file types that would pertain to staff data, right? So that would be the staff demographics and staff assignments. So for staff demographics and staff assignments, it all boils down to who should be reported in CalPads for Fall 2, right? So you need to understand who are your reportable staff because those are the ones that would require both files submitted to CalPads. And to simplify things, you report staff who are certificated staff. Okay, there are three statements that you just have to always be reminded of. Okay, you only report certificated staff who have seeds. Do not report classified staff because this those staff members are reported in a different database system. I think it's in the CBEDS Aura. And then do not report preschool teacher staff who are teaching preschool classes. However, if those preschool teachers have other non-classroom job-based assignments that needs to be reported, then you still have to report them in CalPads, right? So report certificated staff, do not report classified staff, and do not report preschool teacher staff and their courses, okay? Because you will encounter errors when you upload those files to CalPads. So now, since for certificated staff, these are staff members who obviously have certifications through the CTC. Otherwise, they won't have a seed number, right? So these are staff members who are actively employed on Census Day. It could be any administrative staff, any pupil service staff, any teacher credential staff members who have seeds, and so and are employed and functioning in different capacities listed in here. Okay. And then, of course, for those staff members who are not employed by the LEA but are providing, you know, that are teaching classes, this is the guidance that we provide. You basically report all certificated staff positions, including course sections that they teach. You also report the courses that the staff members are assigned to. So essentially, if you have a staff who is not directly employed by the LEA, if you have the option to either report them if they have a seed number, and if you have all the demographic information, their personal information, you can report them to CalPAS, and we actually encourage you to report them. However, if you don't have that information, then you may need to report the courses that they are teaching with the seed 999, but be that may trigger a misassignment. Okay. All right. So for those teachers who are not certificated, so essentially, uh, if a staff member or admin do not have certifications but have a local assignment option, you can basically apply for a certificate of clearance from the CTC for them to be able to acquire a seed. Okay. So again, anyone who has a seed um, and who is actively employed at the district may be reported in CalPAD. So bottom line is if you have a charter school teacher who's not certificated or an admin, then you may need to acquire a certificate of clearance from the CTC to be able to report them in CalPADS. And be reminded that on July 1, 2025, all charter school teachers must obtain a real credential certification from the CTC. So that's the expectation. So anyone who still is operating under that certificate of clearance may have to acquire a regular certification before July 1st, 2025. Okay, so for the staff data is reported through the staff demographics and staff assignment file types. So the staff demographics contain all of the personal information of that staff member, their demographics, race and ethnicity, the year they were employed, the number of years that they are employed at the district as in a certificate position, the total number of years that they have been in a certificated position. So that is reported through the staff demographics. And again, the staff demographics is should be reported for the LEA to gain ownership of that staff member, eh, so that you will be able to report their corresponding staff assignments, their courses that they are teaching if they are teachers. So essentially, if for students you have the SSID enrollment record, for staff we need to have the staff demographic record for you to be able to report additional staff information. Now, the staff assignments is where you report the roles and responsibilities that that credentialed staff is doing in a DLEA. Okay, so if a staff is credentialed as a teacher or pupil service or administrator, that information is reported through the staff assignments. And then, of course, if a teacher is employed, then they may have to be reported with a course section if they are teaching a course, or for admins and pupil service, then you report them with a non-classroom based job assignment, which is part of the staff assignment information. And then after that, you also have to report the roster of students assigned to the courses that these teachers are teaching. So I've mentioned the staff demographic information contain these key fields. You have your employment status to determine if a staff member is a probationary or contractual. So these are all required for all teachers. And then you also have the staff service years total, and the staff highest degree. Okay. So the staff service years LEA and staff service years total is an essential element in determining if a staff member is inexperienced. So it is important that you report whenever you submit a new demographic record every year that the staff service years for these two staff service years fields are updated every year. Otherwise, if you leave it as is and it doesn't progress, especially if you have a new staff member, that staff member will continually be determined as inexperienced. Okay. So for staff service years, it is essentially the count of the years that a staff member has worked at a specific LEA in a certificated position. Okay. And then for the staff service years total, it's essentially the number of years that the staff member worked as in a certificated position, either through an LEA, districts, other states, countries, and also in a private institution. Okay, so this is just a definition of how do you count and what determine the staff service years. Okay. All right, so as I've mentioned, reporting accurate information for a staff through the staff demographics would determine if a staff member is inexperienced, or not. So for inexperienced teachers, through the ESA will determine if a staff member or teacher is ineffective, out of field, or inexperienced teacher. So for the staff demographics, if your SDM record for that staff member continue to have the same number of years, a teacher who has or fewer years of teaching experience will be considered as an inexperienced teacher. Now, if you have a teacher who is misassigned, essentially, that teacher is assigned to a course that based on the CTC's parameters is not the teacher is not credentialed, then that teacher will be considered ineffective. And then, of course, a teacher who has a teacher may also be considered out of field teacher, meaning a teacher who has not yet demonstrated subject matter competence in the subject for a student. So essentially, if you have limited assignment permits or special education limited permits, then that would be considered out of field. So it is important that your staff member has the necessary credentials, especially for the teachers, to be assigned to a specific course. For the staff assignment file contains these four data elements: the job classification that would identify if a staff member is a teacher, admin, or pupil service. This is based on the credential that they have earned or they have acquired from the CTC. So the non-classroom based assignments are job assignments that have been designated as support service assignments. So this is not the assignment that is classroom based. So if teachers, so for admins and pupil service staff, this is basically the assignment that you identify based on their function. So if you have an admin who is a superintendent or a principal, you have a pupil service staff who is a psychologist, those functions are reported through the non-classroom based assignments. However, teachers may also have non-classroom based roles at the district, and so you also may need to report them using the a non-classroom based assignment. So let's say if you have a teacher who is a um, who is on a special assignment, so you may report them as a TOSA, right? And then the school of assignment is essentially telling us where these staff members are assigned to. So if a staff member is assigned to one school, then you report them there. If a staff member, let's say an itinerant teacher, is assigned to multiple schools, then it is expected that that teacher will have multiple staff assignment records reflecting the different school assignments they are in. Then, of course, you have your FTE percentage. This is reflective of the time or percentage spent by that staff member in that particular role or in a particular school site. Okay. So for the staff assignment types, we have teachers, admins, and pupil service. So these are the main credential groups. So within the teacher group, you have a regular teacher 12, a charter school non-certificated teacher. So these are the ones who who got a certificate of clearance from the CTC. And then you have your itinerant teacher, push in, pull out teachers. These are teachers who basically are assigned in multiple sites or in multiple responsibilities within the school, right? And then you have your admins, 10, and then non-certificated admin, and then you have your pupil service. So these job classifications are reported through the staff assignment. So now we have teaching assignments. By default, and as the name implies, these are teaching assignments basically the assigned to courses. So these are your teachers assigned to specific classes um, and in a capacity of a as a teacher, right? So you have 12, 26, 27, and then they should have also have a seed, a valid seed to be able to be reported in courses. Otherwise, if a staff member is not directly teaching a group of students and their role is more on the non-classroom side, then the teacher's assignment would be probably a non-classroom job code, like I've mentioned, a TOSA, or maybe a mentor teacher, or maybe a department chair. Okay. So the job classification FTE percentage is reflects the sum of reflects the amount of time or that a staff member is assigned or doing the role that that they are reported in. So let's say if a staff member is an admin, a teacher, or again itinerant teacher, they may have varying FTE percentages. Bottom line is if you may report an FTE percentage between 5% to 200%. You cannot exceed 200%. Okay. So a staff member, an FTE percentage can be broken down based on two things. If a staff member is assigned in multiple school sites, then by all means you have to break down the FTE percentage based on the school sites. If a staff member is in one school site but have multiple job classifications, then of course you have to break the FTE based on the job classifications. So if you have an admin, let's say you have one staff member at one school who is an admin, and that's the only job they have, then you report them as 100% administrator. Now, if you have a teacher devoted to just teaching, then you only submit one SASS record and report 100% teaching job classification for the FTE. Now, if you have a teacher that is a regular teacher 12 and then also doing itinerant teaching, so maybe she gets sent to a different site or is doing home and hospital teaching or doing band. Okay, so that teacher may be reported with a 12 and a 27, and then you break down the FTE based on that on the time that the teacher is a 12 or a 27. Now, if a staff member is an admin and teaching at the same time, then you also split the FTE. Now, here's a example wherein you split the FTE based on the number of sites that they are assigned to. So if a teacher is assigned to 3 school sites, then you may need to break down the FTE based on the amount of time they spend at those school sites. Okay. So bottom line is you can only break an FTE based on the number of schools assigned or based on the job classifications assigned. So let's say if you only have a teacher that is a 12, but then they have a non-classroom based assignment as well as a teaching as well as they are teaching a class, that the FTE for that would still be just 100%, and you only have to submit one staff assignment record because obviously it does not meet their parameters of multiple sites or multiple job classifications. Okay. All right. So the FTE percentage of 5 to 200% should be observed if you are reporting, staff members who are actively employed and actively working. Now, the exception is that for staff members who are on leave, right? So sometimes you have staff members, admin, pupil service, or even teachers who go on leave but are still employed by the district. So for that, um, in prior years, we recommended that you report the staff member with a non-classroom job-based assignment code of 6018 and an FTE of 0. Now, the guidance changed starting this year, wherein you still report a staff member with a 6018. However, the FTE percentage should be greater than 1, but we recommend you just use the regular FTE when they were actively working. Okay. Otherwise, if you submit a staff record of 6018, non-classroom job code 6018, and still maintain that zero FTE percentage, you will get an error, SAS 0118, uh, during your upload. Okay. So now if you have a staff, a teacher who is on leave, who is assigned as the teacher of record to a class, that teacher should be reported again with a staff assignment of 6018. You report their regular FTE, and then you assign them to the course that they were expected to be, they are contractually assigned to as a teacher. So you report their class, you assign their seed to that course record. Okay. All right. So there are different scenarios on how to report teachers. So basically, these are some of the common scenarios that we always encounter, and so we this is just simplified. However, by looking at this, you would be able to figure out other scenarios or sub scenarios based on your situation, right? So if you have a regular, it all boils down to making sure that you have, if a teacher is the assigned teacher of record, they should be reported, right? And then they should be assigned to a within SAS record. They should also be assigned to the class that they are reported as the teacher of record. Now, if the teacher is on leave, as I've mentioned, you still report them to the course. However, in the SAS record, aside from reporting them as a job classification 12, you report a non-classroom job assignment of 6018 and the appropriate FTE percentage. Okay. So let's say if a course is assigned to a staff member who is a substitute, right? So let's say you have a substitute who is a teacher of record. Why? Because that class was considered vacant as of census date. There was no permanently hired staff member. Then you assign the substitute teacher seat to the course. Okay. Now, if for some reason that substitute teacher has not acquired a seat yet, then you will need to report a seed 999 for that. But obviously, that will trigger a misassignment, right? And then you have your permanently employed substitutes. So you have the option to report them in CalPads as a day-to-day substitute teacher, right? So they may not be assigned to a course because they are not the permanent teacher of record. However, you may report them in CalPads as a permanently employed day-to-day substitute teacher 6014. Okay. For push-in pull-out teachers, you report them with a 27 because they are considered as itinerant teachers. However, and also you have to report a CRSE record for them reflecting the class and the state course code of the class that they are assigned to. Okay. If you have a teacher who is reported with a 27 and assigned to a course, reporting the SCSE file or the roster of students in that class is optional. So if you have a teacher uh, who is doing push in pull out for band in elementary for music or art, then you have you report them with a 27 and submitting the class roster is optional. Okay. So you also have, again, if you have RSP teachers, which I will discuss in a few minutes, um, those teachers should also be reported as a 27 and assigned to state course code 9231. Okay. So you have your college teachers not employed by the LEA. Obviously, they may not have the seed number for that, a seed number. So you report a seed 999 for those college teachers. And then for teachers not employed by the LEA, You have the option to report them with the SEED 999, but that would also be an automatic misassignment. So the recommendation is if that staff member has a SEED, then by all means report that SEED and collect all of the necessary information for that to fill the demographic record as well as the staff assignments. All right, so I mentioned something about special education teachers. So SPED teachers um, are assigned in classes, right? So they may be assigned in a day class where the SPED teacher is both a SPED teacher, has the SPED credentials, as well as um, a multi-subject credential, right? To teach a self-contained class. So these are basically your teachers in day classes. And so if that teacher is assigned to a course, you may report a teacher with a self-contained 1000 with the instructional strategy code of 700 in the course, which will identify the class as special education. Okay. Now, if a teacher is providing students primary instruction in just one subject, so essentially the teacher is in a departmentalized class and they are teaching that class specifically to SPED students, then you report the appropriate state course code of the class, you assign the seat of the teacher to the class, and mark that class as special education as well. Okay. The first part here is more towards instructional scenarios, right? Teachers teaching subject matters, teaching core subjects or departmentalized courses to specifically to state to SPED students. So now you also have special education support staff members. These are your RSP staff members who may have their own class or may be embedded side by side to a self-contained class, right? So for those staff members, it is important to separate them from that self-contained class. So meaning if that teacher is doing a team teaching with a self-contained class, then you have to separate her from that class. You can't just create a self-contained class of 1000 and assign both the regular teacher and the RSP teacher and report them as team teaching. You can't do that because when CTE does their assignment monitoring, that teacher, that RSP teacher who may not have a multi-subject credential is bundled into that self-contained 1000, then it's an automatic misassignment, right? And so it is important to separate the RSP teachers from that class and create their own course record in CalPads. So to do that, you have to report the teacher as a 27, report them to a state course code of 9231 RSP. Make sure that you report the flag the instructional strategy code as 700. And then, of course, as I've mentioned, the job classification is 27. Reporting them as a 27 would basically allow you to not report the students rostered in this RSP class. So it gives you the flexibility of just reporting the staff member and the course, but not the students listed in the course. Okay. So again, it is important that you only flag a course with an instructional strategy code of 700 only if all of those students are SPED students. Just because a student may be in a self-contained class or a departmentalized class, just because some of those students are SPED students, that doesn't mean that you flag that course as 700 because you will get an error in CalPAS if you do that. If CalPAS detects SSIDs of students who are not SPED students in the system. Okay?
Sorry, Kai and Nate, I just
Yeah.
want to interject. Good morning.
Good morning.
I just want to interject for everyone. Even if you all are a small LEA or a charter school LEA, especially when it is regarding teacher years of service, when it is regarding how a teacher should be listed in CalPads versus how they're listed in either your HRIS systems or your SIS systems. You have to be able to build that relationship with your credential analyst, with your HR admin teams to ensure that you all are all reviewing report 4.3 and for its accuracy. Okay, that is not a report that you as a CalPADS LEA admin should solely be reviewing. And so when you're asking questions of how does this title meet up to this description? It requires work, but it requires work from the entire team. Are you reviewing what that local job description or JD says? Are you comparing it to the definition of the actual staff member for what's listed in CalPATS? And again, I recognize that there are challenges. Me personally, I face them. However, we have to be able to put in our due diligence and do the work because if not, you have either your assignment monitoring, you have your TAMO reports, and then your own HR team could then face audits. So let's work together early and get the information correct versus having some type of audit for your LEAs.
Thank you, Sean,
Thank you.
for that guidance on working together, right?
Yes, thank you.